So you're very welcome to this book plug. And I will now hand over to Lucy, and who is going to share some of her journey. And then we will be joined by Dr. Deepak Ravindran, who will then describe his motivation for writing this wonderful book. So I really encourage anyone to pick up the book and have a look. And hopefully today you'll get a deeper understanding of where these strategies can fit into your life. Thank you, Lucy.
Hi everyone, my name's Lucy. I'm 27 and I've lived with chronic pain for the last 11 years. So like many of you, I had a really bumpy road. I saw pretty much every consultant over that time and everybody just told me that I was normal. And I've lived with a chronic tension headache, which is like having water dropped on your head permanently, sickness, IBS. I lost 20 pounds when I was at my smallest at just over 7.5 stone. I get intermittent muscle spasms and I battle fatigue. I missed lots of time from university and had a very successful career, and then woke up one morning with a 12-week back spasm, which took my whole identity. So I had no ability to walk, wash myself, get dressed, drive my car, exercise. I was fully dependent on my family for everything. And that's when I found Deepak. So he was, and I stand by this, the kindest, most empathetic man I had ever met. And he honestly believed that all the pain that nobody could see was real, and he wanted to make me better. So I joined him and his pain management team just under 3 years ago now. And during that time, I've transformed my life. So I've gone from bedbound to rebuilding my career. I now have a better career than ever. I've run a half marathon. I'm buying a house. Yeah, I've just transformed it, and I live by his tools every single day. It's a roller coaster ride. There's never a day that's normal. I never know how I'm going to wake up. It's not plain sailing, but with the tools that Deepak's given me, he's saved my life. So yeah, now he'll tell you a little bit about why he wrote it.
Thank you, Lucy, so much. And I couldn't have asked for a better introduction and a better display of what some of the elements of understanding pain and taking it on board. While I made some things there, it has been you who's actually done it and been able to implement it and had the support to do it there. And I think that's hugely important in any pain journey, as this Footsteps Festival has done. So thank you so much, Claire, Louise, and everyone team for having me and Lucy to talk to you this evening, and good evening to everyone who's joined in today. Many thanks to actually Lucy. And in fact, she occupies the introductory chapter in my book, wherein a story out to say changed and how it can change when you implement a lot of the newer understandings around pain. And actually, when I say new, these are of the last 10 to 15 years. When I finished training as a medical doctor back in India in 1998, none of these findings had really happened. And if you think about it, most of your GPs or consultant colleagues who are my age would have all come out of their medical schools with the same kind of understanding. And there's so much that's changed with our understanding of pain that it is genuinely possible to overcome a lot of the pain only if we knew how the new changes, how the new findings affect our nervous system. And I was finding that actually, I was telling this to a lot of my patients, and I was telling this to Lucy as well. And I think the book was just an attempt to distill everything that I was saying to patients, to GPs on their. support groups that I helping with in my local area in Berkshire. And I thought, you know what, I'm saying the same story so many times. There must be a way wherein I can actually package this into a book. And luckily, I found a very good publisher who could actually bring that forward there, who believed in the same idea that I had and felt that the time was right for a book. So actually, for a lot of people there, I know the title of the book seems very different, but the title is actually a play on the same words. Acronym, yes, it does be willing to look at pain a little differently. And Lucy will be probably one of the first people to tell you how looking at some of the things differently gave her the confidence. But it is essentially not a textbook. It's very much aimed at the general public, the person on and the common man who would not have known about these findings. And I realized I could spend ages talking to doctors and other consultants, but I thought if I could actually put it out to the general public, is that you will have knowledge when you go to your GP to talk about it or to your specialist to talk about it. And then that means all of us get informed and understand on how to manage the pain. And that's where my thought was and my philosophy was in writing the book, to present all the latest advances that have come in pain in a digestible format that could be implemented easily by yourself if you started, but also gave your healthcare professionals an option on how to implement it. So the third part is into saying and to overcome your chronic pain. That was the intention of doing it. But Lucy, more than anyone else, probably exemplify. Would you want to tell us really of pain, what all had before you came to see me? Do you remember? Do you want to take us through that journey of what is it that you received in terms of support or understanding from other healthcare professionals, and what had you tried for your pain up to then?
So the problem that I had was every consultant wants to put you in a box. So whichever symptom was most debilitating at the time, and as you can probably all understand, a flare-up comes in many different forms. So for me, I used to get really, really bad migraines. So I spent a lot of my time in neurology, having multiple brain scans, looking for something obvious like a brain tumor, which I quite obviously didn't have. So they put me on a cocktail of different drugs, all of the tryptophan drugs, amitriptyline, and I was just constantly sick. I was then discharged from neurology with no diagnosis because there was nothing wrong with me. And I then moved to the spinal team to look at my neck, which they told me I had cervical spondylosis, which I'm glad I don't. I had MRIs of my spine. I saw the gastro team. I saw orthopedics. I mean, I think I did the rounds really. And the consensus from everybody was that I was totally normal, and that perhaps I'd just been drinking too much at university and I had a hangover. But as you can imagine, every day there was still widespread pain everywhere. I wasn't keeping my food down. I had no energy. My gut wasn't functioning, and I was totally lost and helpless. So I started to run away from my pain. And this was a coping strategy that I developed on the basis that I was a normal 23-year-old. So I pushed myself really hard at my career. I managed 2 promotions and got to the top of the company in a year and a half. And then woke up one day with that horrendous back spasm and trawled the internet for some form of help and support because we couldn't turn to the GP anymore. I'd seen all of the local practitioners, and I managed to find Deepak and his pain team. And the beautiful thing about Deepak is he has a multifactorial approach. He doesn't want to put you in that box. He's not trying to tell you that he's got a quick fix, you've got a brain tumor or whatever it is that's wrong with you. He understands that every system in your body is linked, and if one is not functioning, it will have an effect on everything else. And he was music to my ears, because he wanted to look at my pain everywhere. So he put me on a drug program. That was essentially really, really important, because without getting my pain levels down, it was impossible for me to see the wood for the trees. I couldn't even consider physiotherapy or exercise or eating a meal, because my pain was just unbearable. So we got my pain down on pregabalin. Some of you probably have been on pregabalin or gabapentin, and again, that was something that Deepak was really sensitive about, because I react very badly to drugs, and he put me on a very low dose and I didn't have many side effects. So we continued, but he constantly listened to me like a human being and didn't make me feel like I was invisible and I was making it all up in my head. So the pain was very real, and so were the treatment that he put forward, which was really successful. So once my pain was under control, we moved to physiotherapy first. So I find movement is the most important tool for me. If I can move, I can get control and freedom. I think that was stemming from the fact that I spent 3 months in bed, so that was something that was taken away from me. It's been a really important tool for my mental health. I try to channel all of my negativity through something positive in exercise, which is why I started running. Nutrition has also been vital. So I've been working with a nutritionist for 3 years. And the thing with the gut is it's directly linked to our immunity. And Deepak talked in his book about the second brain being your gut, and how important your vagal nerve is and how it's all linked. So if you've got a lot of inflammation and widespread pain, it could all be stemming from imbalances in your gut, things like leaky gut, where you have small holes in your intestinal lining, which I had. I also had SIBO and candida and various other horrible nasties in my gut, which had been totally overlooked before and were most definitely influencing my day-to-day symptoms. So I cleared all of those out and then started to eliminate food groups which people with IBS and fibromyalgia regularly react to. And Deepak will talk about all of these food groups throughout his book, and it's something that all of you can use at home every single day to try and make your life easier. So I cut out gluten and sugar and dairy primarily, and then moved on to what they call a low FODMAP diet, and that also removes things like onions, tomato and garlic, which can be very big irritants for people. And that then I also added in a supplement program. So once you exclude all of these foods, then obviously you're getting deficiencies, which is not helpful for your energy levels and your muscle repair and things like that. So I follow a dedicated supplement program with multivitamins, B vitamins, magnesium for muscle pain, all of which Deepak talks about in his book. And I think nutrition is something that we can all use at home. It's a real take-home message. We can all drink more water. We can all try an elimination diet for 2 weeks to see if it makes a difference. And essentially, it's a free technique that Deepak's offering. The next thing that is really important is sleep. So getting that restorative sleep, which I'm sure a lot of you struggle with pain. Definitely something
Sorry to cut you, but I've got Crohn's disease and antral gastritis. So wondering what could help with that, because I mean, I've got allergies as well. So I've tried elimination diets, I've tried everything, and sometimes I'll be on the toilet or I won't want to go. So it's just like I'm finding it a bit lost. But when I've got chronic pain, because of my fracture in my elbow, I don't know what to do because I can't sleep at night. And the antral gastritis, like, it's kind of like I've had it for many years. I've got the immune gastritis, so I don't know what to do really.
Bless you. That's a really difficult situation. I mean, I had a flare up of gastritis last year and was in hospital, and I tried an elemental diet. I don't know if you've heard of that. It was a series of shakes, and it essentially gives you all of the nutrients that you need to live short term, but it just takes a lot of stress off your gut.
So what's it called?
An elemental diet.
Oh, okay.
I can write something in the chat afterwards.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because what I find is with all of this Crohn's and gastritis, then I got type 1 diabetes, and I think to myself, well, all of these things, and because I've got allergies, I've got the oral allergy syndrome, I've become like, well, what do I do next? Because I don't know if there's an answer. I mean, I've had leaky gut syndrome, all what you've had, and I'm experiencing that, and I've got malabsorption because all of these things I was born with health problems, but it's not really like I'm getting the proper nutrients. My body can't absorb it.
Yeah.
It's a really...
So I understand what you're coming from, because people just assume that what you're going through, like everybody says, I'm a leaky gut, it's not a syndrome, or there's nothing to worry about, but it is. Because when you experience that, you know how bad it is. Only you know your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's been really challenging for you. And
yeah,
and it's important that you know that you're not the only one who experiences these difficulties, but I think it's a really important point that you're making, and one that I know that a lot of people here can relate to, is that medicine hasn't quite caught up with the complexity of a lot of people's conditions, and it doesn't just affect one system, it affects you as a person. So I really hope that there is some guidance for you going forward about managing this in a better way, but it's really, really challenging when you have so many different aspects of your condition that's making it really difficult to manage.
It is tricky, Claire, if I may step in there. But what I try to say in my book as well is, one of the things that's been a real in how I look after my patients, or actually how I view pain itself, is that we've now got this really good understanding and acceptance in a lot of members of the medical community, and a lot of GPs and other consultants are waking up to the understanding that that the nervous and the immune system are not two separate systems that go on, they're not like railway tracks which go parallel to each other and they never touch each other. Intimately connected, they develop alongside each other. And what we've realized is that the development of the nervous and the immune systems can always be affected at any point, right from the time that someone is in the first 3 years of their life, through their teenage years, and in adulthood. Anything that disturbs one system can spill over into the other system. So if you have an autoimmune condition wherein your immune system itself is fighting against itself, then these present in your spinal cord, they're present in your brain. So the fighting that happens can happen at any of these levels. And if the nervous system gets wind of it, which it will have to because it's got to protect you, it can get in on the act and the whole thing becomes a confused mess. So it's not surprising. And I see almost that 25 to 40% of all patients who have an autoimmune condition diagnosis like Crohn's or colitis or rheumatoid arthritis, all significant sensitivity and spinal cord or in their body or in their other parts of their legs and arms. And what we are realizing now actually is if you can find a way to calm the immune system and the nervous system, other techniques rather than just drugs, then it opens up. That almost is a mind-opening stuff for me. And for a lot of my patients, I find that when I tell them that, they realize that it opens up the opportunities being kind of stuck only on what's the next drug, to actually say, well, what else can calm my immune system down? What else can calm my nervous system down? And that means it can be something around diet, like Lucy has talked about. It can be something around other therapies of mind and body, which might be sleep, which might be exercise, physical movement. And Lucy, what do you feel were the other things? You talked about diet, and I can go into that a little later there. But what about the other that you were able to bring in to manage your condition much better? You talked about movement, but how did you get into all of this? Was this always there, or is that a separate thing that you had to incorporate in your lifestyle?
So I had to incorporate all of these things because my coping mechanism was to run everywhere at 100 miles an hour in the hope that I would run away from my pain, wake up tomorrow and everything would be marvelous, which obviously wasn't the case. So physiotherapy was to cope with the muscle spasms in my back. So I had to build strength. I had to build more muscle mass. The stronger I was, the better I coped with a flare up when it happened, and the better position my body was in to deal with that. But psychology has also been something that's been so important, because essentially, no matter what anyone does, I have pain 24/7 of some degree, and I need to mentally be able to deal with that on my own. I didn't like the idea of psychology. I'd been told I was normal for so many years, and then all of a sudden the psychology word was thrown at me, and I thought, am I just making this all up? And I wasn't very comfortable with it. It took a long time for me to accept it, but now I have a lot of tools that help me identify triggers. Sometimes I can even see the triggers coming. I have a habit of booming and busting. It's probably something some of you are familiar with. So I push and push and push, and then all of a sudden I bust. I'm about to do that with my house move. I can feel it looming. I'll be incorporating a lot of Deepak's tools the other side of this high stress change in my life. But yeah, I had to accept what my triggers were. I had to unpick a lot of my past as well. Childhood traumas, things that happened to me as a kid. And some of that was a very dark place for me. But in order to understand myself and to move forward, I had to, and to learn to cope better, I had to go to those places. So psychology has been really important, and so has mindfulness. Silly things like learning to breathe was something that Deepak's book has helped me with. Apparently I don't breathe very well or very often, and I never really relax. I live in that fight or flight chaos zone 24 hours a day until I pass out. So that's something that we can all do, sitting at our desk or walking around the supermarket. We can just actually stop and breathe, which was really important. And I think the real take-home message for my mental health was that every bad day that comes, no matter what my level of despair, and believe me, I've been in very suicidal places over the last 9 years, a good day always follows. And I think that's what we all have to remember, is to live by those values and not by those emotions that are driven by pain in the moment. Did someone have, did I see a question pop up? Or?
Yeah, I think I just answered one of them there.
Okay.
And I think you make a very important point, and it's something I go into the psychology part there, because when I do these pain management programs alongside my physiotherapist and my psychologist they deliver, we have, or the whole of the NHS has these pain management programs there, and lots of patients, if they are not ready for it, and a lot of you who are listening today would have had the by your pain consultant, go and see talking therapies or go and see psychology. And there, and Lucy, I think you were brilliant in taking that on and realizing that there is a role for that there. And what I would want to say actually is that it's not that we are ever saying that the pain is being made up. It definitely is real. And if you think about pain as a fundamental protector, then anything that the nervous system does is going to be in service of from what it considers our nervous system and our brain sitting inside that box that we call the head and the skull, is that it doesn't recognize and is not able to differentiate between the threat of an actual danger to your life, like an animal or some kind of big thing, versus the other threats that would come from being shouted at or being neglected or being abused or being bullied or being traumatized with words or anger. And that's often we realize now that us and the science is telling the pathways and the signals, the way it travels in the spinal cord and the nerves are the same. So somebody will have some arthritic change in some part of the body. So we are not denying that there is a change that's happening in some part of the body. But when the signal travels from there, it's processed and amplified by the spinal cord and the brain, which means that actually, other than we giving a tablet like ibuprofen or diclofenac or something that can calm the point, we have the opportunity to influence the way the signal gets amplified in the brain. Now, you could use something like a TENS machine that kind of messes up the message that's traveling up, or you could use something like thinking about it differently. And that thinking about it differently, trying to give you the confidence to actually think about things differently, is what my psychologist is able to do. Sometimes they're able to help you challenge it a little bit and say, do you really need to be that worried? Other times they'll say, yes, it's there, but look at the you want to do in life tomorrow is to get to a common goal. So can you accept that the pain is going to be alongside by making it work for you sometimes? Protection, not to be afraid to a certain extent, but commit to going to another goal. And you are just various techniques use. And that's where the benefit of having somebody like that is there, because every signal gets amplified and the context is there in reaches the brain at what time. Or if the brain has got to make a protective decision, sometimes the psychologist can help start that. And that's what I write in my book as well, is try to think of the pain management program not as another fix it kind of thing, but as the first step to building some very valuable skills. And that toolkit is what I think, Lucy, you were able to take away from working with my team, isn't it? Over time, it's not that the pain has gone away, as you said, but you've been able to look at the bigger goal of, getting back to a job, getting back to movement. Uh, do you feel that that's what the work with my physio and psychologist was able to do? How would you think about, because you had a little bit more of a one-to-one kind of pain program, but what do you feel were the takeaways from such a program for you?
I think it's really important that your team, and the way a program like that is designed, is that your team actually talk to each other. So whatever you're working on with one practitioner, the other one is complementing. So you feel like you're making progress. I mean, it's about setting realistic goals and small goals, because what you think you're going to be capable of doing in 7 days' time might be completely thrown 360 by a flare up at any point. But the tools that are there allow you to do it at any space. So my psychologist suggests that I become my observer self. So I look at my problem or my pain or my situation, and I remove all my emotion and I look at it in a sensible way, and I try to calm those pain receptors down. I think it's really easy when we're in pain to get sucked into a black hole, that this is what our life is always like, and that we couldn't possibly pull ourselves out of it, and that the only way out and the only way we're going to have no pain is if somebody would just let us sleep forever. But these tools that the physios offer and the psychologists offer, they kind of hold you accountable. They give you little goals. They make you want to go back to them the following week or month with improvements, and they help you make things that seem impossible. Like for me, I just wanted to be able to drive for 10 minutes. They make goals like that achievable because they're there all the way to support you. It's not like you're saying, I'd love to be able to drive my car, but it's just you against the world. And then on the back of that, Deepak is helping you keep your pain levels down with medication, which makes all of those things easier to achieve. So it's been really important. There's no one practitioner that can fix you. It has to be everybody pulling together at the same time towards the same goal. And it's about consistency. Every single day, my life is like a military operation in some ways, doing all of these steps that Deepak talks about, you know, managing my stress, managing my diary, trying to pace myself, getting the right nutrition, getting good restorative sleep. One bad night's sleep is enough to cause a couple of day flare up for me. And just keeping moving. And I think the biggest take home message from Deepak's book is he makes you understand your body. Like you understand the difference in a pain for, you know, putting a nail through your finger and the type of pain that we experience every day and how that's different. And it's a very interactive space. So there's lots of sections in the book where you can actually reflect on your day-to-day life. So when he talks about the diet section, you can say, am I eating this? Am I doing this? In the psychology section, he'll ask you questions about how you feel in different situations and what's happened in your past. And you can really start to look at your life and the ups and downs, and then start to look at how you will cope differently tomorrow, which I really liked about the book. So not only can you learn about your brain and how it's working and how you can learn to fire and wire differently and to change that, but you can also just look at the little things that you're doing every day and how you might be able to improve them.
Thank you, Lucy, so much there. And in there, actually, Lucy has you've highlighted something very important, and that has given me the greatest hope in the fact that we don't have to be stuck with the pain, or at least we don't have to find a person, you know. And then over time, I met Louise as well, and I got to interview her for the book. And I spoke to a few other pain advocates, you know, people who lived with pain, but who have changed their life around. And the book has got, so each of the chapters around there has got an initial story. And these are all real people who have come through the clinic, who have been through various pain clinics in the country and have found their epiphany movement, or they found their reason, and the pain has changed, but they are a different person and they are a much more fulfilled person there. And each of those stories, to me, actually, I look to say that I look upstream at all these 10 or 12 stories that of all these people that I now know, and I understand their stories, and I've had the chance to actually spend that 1 hour with them listening to their story there. There are patterns. And what I found most important about that pattern is when I look at the neuroplasticity and the nervous system, your immune system and your muscle has got the ability to learn and adjust and adapt and improve. And that is a feature that's there throughout our lives. You know, we were again taught in school that whatever growth occurs up to the age of 20, and then you're kind of stuffed. You know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, they say. But that is so wrong, because you can actually teach lots of dogs lots of tricks. And that is the part there, that if you start small, if you start with a small, said, you know, start low and go slow, and you start something new, the science is there to actually say that your nerves can form a new pathway. And that when you repeat the same thing a few times, you are then able to almost wire the pathway. So you fire the nerve cells a few times. These nerve cells form a pathway and they wire together, and nerves that fire together will always wire together. And that new wiring means you're it 6 to be done for a new habit to form. If you think about it, 66 times, even if you do it twice a day, is around 6 to 10 weeks. And if you think about how most pain management programs are around that same duration, it's kind of for that reason that it's the average amount of time. But that doesn't mean everybody will get it in 6 weeks. Some people will make the change in 2 weeks' time. For others, it might take 6 months to 8 months. But the to small steps which are convenient, which are easy to do, which feel good to do. And it doesn't have to be something very majorly physical. It can be something simple. And the way the literature talks about it is if you tag it to what you already do. So if you want to do a bit of breathing techniques, if you tag it to what you, example, if you get up in the morning, then that might be a time that when you're brushing your teeth, you do a small amount of an added exercise in those 2 minutes. And those are the things able to take on. And from what I remember, it's almost 2.5, 3 years, when you came in initially very unwell and not able to stand for any length of time, it's those small steps. You had that moment wherein the determination that, yes, I know now about my pain, I understand it, and I want to move forward. But you started it as well in that small steps. And I think that's what made the difference. And the science backs up that if people are able to do what you did and take that confidence, then that same improvement can come in every perspective of how long they've had the of neuroplasticity, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely small steps. I mean, I've come a long way, but it's been almost 3 years of being in a pain program and on a recovery journey. And there are still some extremely bad days. But yeah, essentially I learned to walk again. I just was walking for 5 minutes in the hydrotherapy pool. So a year later to run a half marathon was a bit like a dream, but I just wanted to channel what my body had taken away from me into something positive, and I used that sheer grit, determination, and with a splash of stupidity to achieve something that meant an almighty amount. And I think all of us have inside us something that gives us that little fire in our belly, whatever it may be. And once you find that thing, you should use it as the center of your recovery. So if you really, really want to get back to work, or if spending more time with your family and friends and going out of the house more every day is what really makes you feel alive, listening to live music, whatever it is that gives you that sense of inner peace that takes you away from your pain for 5 minutes, for an hour, whatever it might be, that's what I used to really help me. Just having that 1 hour a day of peace made all of the other hours more tolerable. If you're living in a tunnel of chaos, it makes it almost impossible to know which ball to pick up first. I mean, I have a horse and he's like my lifeline. He gives me that sense of belonging and that peace that I belong in the world because there's no judgment ever. He's an animal. He doesn't mind if I'm crying, if I'm really poorly, if I'm sick. And I use him as a form of mindfulness. But for other people, they can probably do something a lot less expensive than having a horse to find that mindfulness. But it's just getting away from your diagnosis is really important. It feels like there's a monster that it lives in your life as an invisible shadow. But once you can embrace the monster and ask him if he'd like to come to tea with you, it makes life a lot easier. And that's where I am now, 3 years later. But at the beginning, the monster was a hellhole. So wherever you are in your recovery journey, just know that it is possible and that there is hope, and not to give up, because you really aren't alone. There are a lot of people that want to help you. You just have to have the confidence to say, I'm struggling. And that was possibly one of the hardest things for me to do, was to say, I can't actually cope anymore. I can't do this. and then that's when doors open. So if any of you are sitting at home thinking, oh, I'd really love to pick up that book and to try some of those techniques, I'd really like to change my life, just do it.
Thank you, Lucy. I couldn't have. Thank you so much for those words there. And the monster who came to tea. Louise, you must remember that that itself is the name of the next movie shot on pain. but I think, and Lucy, you exactly said that different people. So for example, equine assisted therapy or animal therapy there, that itself is a technique because touch is such a fundamental safety for the nervous system. And when I was looking at the literature, when I was writing this book, I found more than 25, 30 techniques. Yes, on the NHS, only about 3 or 4 are kind of available, and especially some may be available in your area or not. And as Lucy said, some are expensive, some are not so expensive. And actually, I thought, you know what, even I can't understand which ones will help different people because each person has got a different idea and what's accessible close by is very different. So actually one of the chapters listing every has been tried and found to be useful for pain in some groups of people. And I would encourage any of you listening to this is check out that, and you may find that there is a technique that you can do that doesn't cost the earth, that is something you've already tried and found to be useful in calming the system down. And that may be the first thing that you start, so that you start it small, you get that under your belt, you get comfortable with it. And then as Lucy very, very articulately said, if you have some kind of air in your belly, some kind of a orient you there, then you can work alongside the monster and have them for tea rather than them crowding your house. I think that would be the definite way forward. And that's what I hope the book will do, because it is meant to be some kind of an information, but also a self-help book, because I know that in my area in Berkshire, yes, there are lots, there are pain clinics, there are lots of pain consultants, there's GPs who are interested in pain management, physios, and I've got a nutritionist, and I have a full team. But that is not the case in many parts of the UK. That's not the case in many other parts of Wales or Ireland or other parts of the United Kingdom. And for them, this is at least I'm hoping that my book, along with Footsteps Festival is having, going to give that confidence that there is now the knowledge to actually take a few steps confidently on your own, and then know when to reach for a specialist and which specialist, what you need to speak to them, to ask them. So for example, if you think you're going to go for a surgery, I kind of just highlight that there is a simple thing called brand, which I write there, wherein I say, before you go for any surgery, make sure that you and your surgeon understand what are the benefits of the surgery you're going to go for, because you'll be very surprised to know that sometimes the benefits that they think that they want to give you may not be the exact benefits that you think you want from the surgery. And you need to be sure of that, because going down a one-way street without what it is that you are hoping for. You need to know what the risks are. You need to know what the alternatives are. That's a discussion both you and your surgeon need to know. And then actually it's an interesting question, but it's a question that you need to ask yourself and maybe the surgeon. What if you decide to do nothing? What would be the outcome? What would it look like 3, 4, 5 years down the line? And that's something you need to have, that confidence in all these 4 things before you go down a surgery, because I worry that if something doesn't exactly go right with surgery, and the surgery completely awesome, the studies are saying that 20% of people who have had any kind of orthopedic or general surgery or urology or gynecological, women's surgery, pelvic surgery, are going to be left with chronic pain. And if we are saying that opioids are not good and there are no good injections, then we should sometimes ask whether surgeries are the right thing at the right time or not. And that's something I just highlight as well, because that's all important. What we can do is very much based on what's going to be. Those are things that I point out in the book there. But fundamentally, I hope it is of use to everybody who reads it. I've found that a lot of healthcare professionals have found it useful. I found members of the public have come and told me they found it useful there. I do agree there are some parts that get a bit technical, but that's what these days are about, to actually say that there are people who benefit from it, and it's at least something as a starting point in your journey.
Thank you so much for that, Deepak. I think it's really refreshing to hear a consultant, give a rounded view that actually it's lots of little things that have the biggest difference. That it's about giving things a chance and trying them out, rather than pinning your hopes on one medication or one surgery as being the answer, or one approach even. So I think that's so clear throughout your book, that you look at, you're asking us all to reflect on us as whole people, not just one little aspect of our condition. And Lucy, you've so clearly kind of illustrated like how important meaning and connection is in your life, and how much you've gained from that. And I'm going to share the link from the Footsteps Festival, because here we really appreciate that it can be a real struggle to think of new things to do when you're struggling to manage a pain condition, and it can really wear you out. So the Footsteps Festival has offered a whole range of activities and a range of events for people to come along, connect with others, and try something different, or try something that they haven't tried in a while. So I really appreciate that as part of the Footsteps Festival. And I also really appreciate what Deepak and Lucy are saying about finding anything that calms your nervous system. The Footsteps Festival is run by volunteers, and we are currently looking for sources of funding. So if you are in a position where you can offer some a donation to help run the festival, put on more events, and make this a bigger offering, I'm just going to add the link to our Just Giving page to the chat. There is no amount too small, and we appreciate anything that people can offer. That's the notices aspect of it. I'd like to offer just in terms of questions that were asked in the chat. I really appreciate the people who've been sharing their experiences and contributing. There was a really interesting question from Emma regarding the benefit system within this country and the way that care is managed. And I wonder, Deepak, if you'd like to answer it. It's that Emma believes that one of the major problems is that people are fed the line by healthcare professionals that they can't get better, and that they are put on drugs that don't help them, and ultimately it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then they also find themselves stuck in the benefit system, which also doesn't support people improving their quality of life. And it takes enormous strength to get past this inaccurate view that you can't improve your life. So I think what Emma's asking here is like, what's the way out of this? And I really appreciate that question, because as a healthcare professional, I come up against these system structures that keep people fixed in really difficult situations. But it's a really challenging situation. So if you could speak to that, Deepak, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you, Claire, for that, really. And Emma, thank you for the question. A very pertinent and a very important question. I find that this is a challenge for me as well when I see patients in the clinic there. What makes me optimistic and hopeful, and I don't think this is going to be solved in the next 1 or 2 years, but over the next 5 what I expect will happen. I am in a way quite happy about the new nice guidelines that's come out, is that it's put a mark on the ground. And I, for those of you who are listening there, the nice guidelines is a kind of new mandatory set of guidances that has come out just about a couple of months ago, which says how chronic pain patients should be assessed and supported. And what it has done is it has instilled or initiated the need for a multidisciplinary assessment and a proper approach there. And I'm confident that because now there has to be a commissioning or a provision of these kind of holistic approaches at the primary care level, it will filter in the next 2-3 years onto the tribunal system, onto the benefit system, because they will have to say that it's not about the only surgery, it'll have to be about what rehabilitation. Now, that might mean that each council or each government body has to end up funding, and we will have to find some money such rehabilitation, and that may have some hard decisions on how you're going to fund it, but the recognition and the awareness will be there that GPs or surgeons or medical physicians like myself are not simply going to say you're stuck with this. There is another smaller reason. The reason we all say you're stuck with it is, even I came to thinking that chronic pain is something that cannot change because the damage is done and therefore that is it. We are realizing that even with arthritis or osteoarthritis or there's always that element of neuroplasticity that you can make a difference. There may be changes that have happened that you may not reverse, but the impact on it, you can definitely make a reversal there. And that's something which will take time to again go through the system, teaching the present generation of the GPs. I read a very interesting saying by somebody, I forget who had said that there, but they said that when you're 18, convictions are the hills you, but at 40, those convictions are the, and reality is that once you've had those conviction and beliefs formed at the age of 18 or 19, when you're going through medical school or when you're going through life, then it's very difficult to change them and stop something and different when you're in your 40s or 50s. So I think the change in how we understand pain and rethink pain has to start for both from our medical schools and high schools, and how we think about pain from childhood and adolescence. And then we'll have to come at it from bottom up. That's why I say over the next, there will be a definite change, but it's happening.
Yeah, I think it's really challenging when there's a condition like pain that affects every aspect of people's lives, but yet people are, and that was so clear from Lucy's story, is that the medical model puts people into different specialties. So they go and see 7 different doctors who aren't able to see the bigger picture, but equally for many of my patients, the fact that the benefit system and the health system are separate is really challenging for them too. So I think you're right, Deepak. It's a fresh look at the whole lot.
I think the same thing is where these integrated care systems are coming. So for example, in my area in Berkshire, we are being told that the budget, the pot for looking after people, the health and the social care and all of the stuff is apparently one pot. So there is a push among all these organizations, the councils, the borough councils, the benefit system, the acute community hospital. We're all being told that let's look at the patient journey and see how we can avoid duplication and come up with a better plan. At least it sounds good in very nice theory. So I completely accept that I may have a bit of a rose-tinted glasses here in how it'll actually pan out in real life. But the intentions are noble. And if it does mean that the pot of money is one, we're all being asked to think a little differently about what is required for the patient. It's not just operate on money and then get the next operation on. We are hospitals and surgeons and people like myself, we are not going to be paid for doing injection after injection every 2 months anymore. So our incentive for doing repeated surgeries, injections, and consultations are just not there anymore.
Yeah, I think I can empathize with the rose-tinted glasses and the hopes for the future, Deepak. But I guess if there weren't enthusiastic people trying to make a change, nothing would happen. So just have to keep plugging
There's
along.
neuroplasticity, Claire. That is hope.
It is. It's hope. It's hope. I cannot thank you both enough, Lucy and Deepak. Lucy, you're so incredibly generous, sharing how you have, your journey to recovery, and I would really encourage anyone who's on Instagram to look up Lucy. She shared her her handle, and it's lucy.roadtorecovery. I would also encourage you to follow Deepak across multiple social media channels. He shares lots of helpful insights and sparks good discussions. So obviously I'd strongly recommend the Pain-Free Mindset. If you've enjoyed this talk today, it's such a good handbook, and I think Lucy can kind of vouch for it, that following this little boom that she's going to go through, she'll be picking up her copy and going back to basics again. I thought this was a lovely comment that Ashley Montgomery made. It's a Brene Brown quote, and it's that courage, compassion, and connection will be my constant companion. And both of you have demonstrated so much tonight that it's the connection with the meaning and the connection with others that matters so much in this journey to improvement and change is possible. Really, thank you all so much, and thank you to everyone who joined us this evening for your thoughtful comments and questions. I really appreciate it. And I think we'll just ask Louise to stop the recording.